Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. As always, we hope that you would like us, perhaps subscribe, and even support us on Patreon. Today's guest is Sue Erhart. She's someone who's committed to helping others reconnect with their authentic selves and lead more fulfilling lives. Her journey began actually in midlife, where a quest for deeper meaning led her to embrace practical spirituality. She's the author of Lose Your Critic for Good, and as such, she specializes in making abstract spiritual concepts accessible and actionable, offering tools and guidance to help others overcome self-doubt and unlock their inner wisdom. Through her books and her work, she empowers her audience to navigate personal growth with confidence, fostering a life filled with joy, purpose, and self-discovery. And I can tell you, this book is just full of practical tools. And I love that concept, practical spirituality. But before we get into the book, Sue, could you just take us back to your childhood and relate what your spiritual journey has been from childhood until now? And then we'll get into the meat of your book.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks for that beautiful introduction. So my childhood, I come from a large family. I have 7 siblings.
Wow.
And we were a large, close-knit Catholic family who were supported by wonderful, loving parents, and were given a lot of values that I think so many of us have, which is hard work and doing good work and being kind and all those things. And it was a wonderful way to grow up. But I felt in my 20s a real push to move myself away from traditional religion. And it was something that was a little challenging for me because my family is a practicing Catholic family, and that was a little bit of an outsider behavior for my family. But it was still something internally that I felt pulled to do. And I can now tell you, Bob, in hindsight, that I'm so glad that I listened to that, because what happened is I took myself on a personal spiritual journey of direct connection with God, and really found myself, found the ability to love myself, and really just found this now very strong connection. And I really can now look back at it and see it was the best thing I did, even though I spent a lot of years in shame and guilt because I took that step away from traditional religion and went out on my own. So today I enjoy a really strong connection. And what I love doing is sharing with other people how helpful the spiritual life is to your daily life. And it's a message I wish I had earlier in my upbringing, that it wasn't just about the devotion and the acknowledgement, but that there are real ways that once you welcome spirit, God, divine into your life, there are real ways that your life improves. And I'll tell you, Bob, it got way more fun for me. And that was something, if someone had advertised that spirituality brings fun into your life, I might have gotten on this bandwagon a little bit sooner. So I do my best to spread the word and to share my wisdom that I've learned in my personal journey.
Well, before we get into that part of it, I'm just curious how your relationship with your family has survived all this, or hasn't?
It is actually thriving. I have wonderful siblings who are welcoming to my brand of spirituality, who have a complete open mindedness. I will say one of the terrific things about my large family is that we are always in a state of forgiveness for each other. And, we bump around like normal big families and have our little clashes or tussles, but within a couple days, we've all forgiven and moved on. So I would tell you that my relationship with them is stronger than ever.
Oh, great. That's good. That's good to hear. And that includes not just your siblings, but your parents?
My parents are both passed,
Oh,
so they're no
okay.
longer with us. But I would like to think, Bob, that my relationship with them is stronger than ever too.
Okay. That works. That works. Okay. All right. So, what was it that made you decide to create a book?
Well, it really started with a midlife decision. So I'll just tell you a little bit of my background. I'm a lawyer by training. And before I retired, I was a corporate executive for a large public company. And I really thought I was satisfied with life, but I hit midlife and really started to feel a pull for something more. And I enjoy writing. It's something that I've done. I journal. And I really gave myself permission to just jump in with writing and pursue it wherever it took me, which was, I will tell you, Bob, I'm kind of an ambitious, career driven person. And that was a
Uh,
little unusual for me to say, I'm just going to do something for the fun of it. So I jumped into writing and I started writing by writing essays that, Bob, I would put into emails that I would then go in and schedule for that email to be sent back to myself at some random date in the future. So, in a
huh.
way, I was like delivering myself my own newsletter, and I loved it. I had so much fun with it, like sending myself messages around things that I had learned or heard, or I just wanted to remember. Um, and that was so satisfying to me that I soon found myself asking friends if they would subscribe to a newsletter that I was creating. And thus began me sharing my writing. And Bob, I had so much fun doing this. I mean, just it was pure joy for me. Um, it was a free newsletter, no income. It was just something I did for joy that I felt like this book literally was just the next step in the progression. It was as if I took each baby step along the way and I felt like I was just led to write this book and it came together really easily for me.
That what an imagination you must have. I'm just thinking about, it's one thing to journal. A lot of us journal, uh, and I'm a big proponent, and I like to spread the word about The Artist Way, which is a book by Julia Cameron. You're shaking your head, so I assume you're familiar with that book.
Very
And
familiar.
yeah, and I've been doing morning pages for 6 months now, and will probably continue through the rest of my life with those. So, that's one thing, but to decide to send your future self this newsletter, wow, what a concept. That, that,
It,
that
it was it's fun, and I'll tell you, Bob, I still occasionally will get one of them, and it just lights me up when it happens.
yeah, that's terrific. It's it's almost, I don't know. I think about people who say, if I was still my child self, what do I want to tell myself? But you're reversing that, and it's almost like, well, your younger self is telling your older self what you've discovered or what's exciting to you. Uh, I don't know. I just can't get over that. So one of the things about your book uh, is that it seems like I don't know, it's a process that you could go through in a month. if you do, there are what 28 chapters in there. So if you're doing one a day, and then doing the work, which I find is the critical piece of just about any spiritual journey. It's one thing, many of us, and I've got a lot of books behind me that written by authors I've interviewed, but some of them are just old standards. And, you can read all this stuff, but it doesn't help you a bit if you don't do the work. So maybe you could talk us through a little bit about, why the format is the way that you chose it, the way that you organized it. Because to me, when I read your book, it's like, okay, there's a teacher in her, somewhere, because that thing of, well, I'm going to tell them what I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them, and then I'm going to tell them what I told them. And knowing that people need to hear things repeatedly before they start to take hold. So where did all that come from? Because I don't think you've had any teacher training, right?
I have done. I don't have any teacher training, but I have taught as an adjunct professor at a law school for a few years. That was a project I took on in my career. So I do have that teacher bent. But as I said, I'm also a lawyer. And I spent a lot of years writing persuasive legal briefs, trying to get my arguments across to the court and to the other side. And I think I really honed that skill of bringing clarity to what I'm trying to say, and then knowing that my audience needs to hear it a few times before it seeps in. But what I really wanted from this book was to create an essay that someone could read, and the essay would sort of seep into their consciousness and bring some new ideas to them. And then I wanted to give them a very specific exercise so that you don't just have like, oh, okay, that's a good new idea. I like that idea. You really take the idea and bring it into your life, because I agree with you completely, Bob. It's in the work where things are done. And so people need to take these concepts out into, I call it out into the wild, into your life, get into a situation, and then apply the principles right there on the spot in the wild. And that's where the change happens. And my exercises help you get into that place of applying them in the wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea of the wild. So that, if I'm somebody considering this whole concept of my inner critic, and there are some pieces of that critic that can be beneficial, I assume, but that critic has lived inside me for so long that it's almost like, how dare you even consider that I should get rid of this critic? What is left if that critic's gone? What are the parameters then, or the guidelines, the boundaries of my life if this critic just disappears? And I think about the fact that you had a Catholic upbringing. And to me, and I'm not Catholic, but I've talked to enough Catholics and interviewed enough on this program, as a matter of fact, that is one thing that installs a good bit of that inner critic right there. So why did you think you had to get rid of that? And then what happens once it's gone?
Well, first, I'm going to talk, Bob, a little bit about what the critic does and how it shows up for people. And the first most obvious way is just blatant self-criticism. So you people who are down on themselves and criticize themselves. That's the obvious one. But the critic shows up in a lot of other ways, and let me just delineate those. So another way I see the critic showing up is people who play small, who settle and downplay and kind of keep themselves small instead of letting their expansive spirit out into the world. Yet another way I see the critic show up is people who settle for less than what they truly want and then tell themselves, this is enough, this is okay. The fourth way I see the critic show up is that it tells you to conform in different situations, how you should show up, how you should dress, what you should look like. And the last thing I think the critic tells a lot of people is that they need to put themselves last, meaning they should put all others before them. So the critic kind of shows up in all of those different ways. And I'll first go to your question of, well, what happens when you lose this critic? And what I experienced as I broke the habit of listening to the critic or doing these behaviors, my authentic spirit and soul came forward in a big way. I like to say, people talk about the whispers of the soul. I feel like my soul became a shout. It was like loud and proud and said, we've got a lot to say and we've got a lot to share and a great passion for teaching it to other people. So I would say that that's what is the result. And with that end result, you don't need to worry about doing something that, let's just say, society would consider bad or wrong because you're connected to your authentic spirit. That's not what you're focused on. You're focused on living a life that's authentic and your pure expression.
Yeah. I guess there's a sense that comment, though, about this is enough, is that in spiritual circles, some people say, well, if I decide that what I have is enough, then I'm happy, then I'm content, then I don't feel the need to accumulate more. And the issue that a lot of people have is that more is always better. So if you assume that enough is enough, then you're much more content. So, your concept of this is enough comes out like that's a negative, that this is enough. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Let me talk about that because I think a core spiritual principle is that I'm an eternal being made in love. And yes, Bob, I agree with you. Like looking at what is present before you today and saying it's enough is a wonderful way to live. But I believe as eternal beings, there is always more in front of us. And I believe the real juxtaposition and the thing that we're fighting on the inside is that both things are true. Both that what we have is enough and it is good and it is for us. And I believe all those things. And we want more. We want more joyous experiences. I've never once had a fabulous day and then woken up the next day and say, well, I hope this day is less than yesterday. No, I mean, we always are sort of craving it. And I think it is part of our eternity, literally saying there is always more in front of you. Always, always, always.
Okay. So that's, what I like about that is that it has that sense of both and, rather than I have to pick one or the other. So instead of that duality, it sounds like this is a lot more encompassing and I can deal with both and, because
I agree.
It's as you said, in terms of life, it's all about experience. and the more experiences you can have, and that's where the more comes in. Like, if I've had enough, then I might as well say, okay, this life is over because I've had enough. Versus, well, let's get out there and see what else there is. So, yeah, I like that. I do.
I'll even add one more thing, Bob. I actually think the desires for more emanate from our souls. I mean, and so yes, I call the concept yes and. You said both and. It's both affirming and inclusive, and it's saying today is a perfect day. I have what I need. I have, and you can appreciate and see those blessings. And I think your soul's pulling you forward towards more, and whatever more means to you. I mean, more satisfaction in your relationships, more joy.
Yeah. So the desire not only to write this book and get it out there, but what are you hoping your audience then gains from going through your prescription here of what they should be doing each day in practical spirituality?
So, first and foremost, I hope readers take away from this book that the critic isn't them. And I admit there were a lot of years that I thought my habits of being hard on myself, pushing myself with criticism, forcing myself to conform to what others expected of me, doing what I should, I thought those were parts of who I was. And so part of this book is simply opening your mind to the idea that those are ideas and constructs and often things we've just kind of picked up living life. And when you really, really tap into that inner wisdom, you don't get those messages anymore. So, what I hope people get from this is first and foremost a belief and an understanding that they can let go of those critical ways and tap into their natural motivation for doing life.
So there's a trust, and you do deal early on in the book with the concept of trust, because there's a definite trust in, and maybe faith goes along with that, faith and trust, that the journey that you're going to take them on is a journey worth doing, and a trust that when they've stripped away this critic, that there's something beautiful at the end of it.
Yeah, yeah. And there absolutely is. And people who've read the book and done the exercises come to me with so many stories of finishing the book and then finding themselves taking action on something that had been on their heart for a long time. But for whatever reason, they had kind of held back and not pursued something that was on their heart. And I hear so many people telling me stories of that. And that's what I hope to see, is people saying, if this is on your heart, follow it. And the critic, which a lot of people think is common sense or rationality, the critic is the one who's going to tell you, like, that's not a good idea, or that won't make any money, all of those self-limiting thinking behaviors. Yeah. And once you learn to see past those and truly just kind of allow your pure wants to emerge, life just gets really beautiful.
Yeah. So without using names, would you mind sharing a story or two with us of, what these people told you and what those dreams were and what they tried and what happened?
Yeah. So I had one woman who completed the book and had realized that something that was on her heart was to become a death doula with hospice. And she spent years not pursuing it. And again, for all sorts of reasons that oh, could I really do that? Or is that worthwhile? Or whatever it is. And she said she finished the exercises and she went to hospice and started the process. I mean, it's as if just something clicks and it says, hold on, all of these ideas I'm listening to are just limiting me and keeping me from my heart. And I'll give and that's a moving story. And I'm
Uh,
here to tell you that not every story is going to be like that big or that different. I had one reader tell me that she realized after the book that something she absolutely loves to do is assemble prepackaged furniture. The kind that you get at IKEA and these other stores.
yeah.
I'm not kidding. And she realized, and she said she started offering her services to friends and neighbors just because for the pure pleasure of doing it because she really enjoyed it. That was another little story someone shared with me. So, Bob, I'm just so interested to see all the ways that each of us have little things on our heart, like something we would enjoy doing,
Yeah.
something that kind of speaks to our natural strengths. And it's frequently something that's helpful to others. And we hold those gifts back because the critic has convinced us not to pursue them. So those are just a couple of the stories from readers that I've heard.
That is, I'm sure there are a ton of people like me who hate to assemble prepackaged furniture who would love to have her phone number.
Yeah, I mean, and Bob, I love the idea that um, a divine mind gave us each these natural strengths and these desires, and if we all follow them, I just envision this collaborative economy that works really well. That we're each sort of playing in the spaces where we shine, and those are messages that when I was young in my career, I
Mhm.
hadn't received. I mean, when I was young in my career, I thought my highest best use was to do what my employer expected of me, to be the person that my clients needed at whatever moment it was, as I was a lawyer counseling them, and to really show up in life in ways of doing what was expected of me. I thought that made me a good person, Bob. And
Yeah.
that's some of the thinking that I personally had to work through and do my own inner work to really lose that. And then once I did, I found this inner spirit that just broke through the surface.
Yeah. So when you did your own inner work, what did that consist of, and were there particular books that helped you through that process?
It's funny. I read a lot, but I cannot tell you that any one book was very transformative to me. I feel like I took little tidbits from all different kinds of books, but what for me was hugely helpful was my morning writing,
Mm.
the morning pages that you're talking about. I just found that once I really committed to the practice of getting up in the morning and using that first hour of the day to write for myself, that this tremendous wisdom came forward and it allowed me to see my thinking, to see myself, and to really work through a process of simply loving myself and really revisiting my past and just again loving myself through all of that. And that was truly my process over years of just writing and seeing myself, and then of course sending myself essays in the future.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, there's something magical that happens when you write just longhand versus typing at the computer. I don't know,
I agree.
it's just something that is more communicative between you and yourself when you do that. And when I'm at the computer, it's fine if I'm sending communication outside of myself. But boy, there's nothing that beats that handwritten work. Uh, I'm really with you on that. So it must be that you're living your perfect life right now. And
Bob, I got to tell you, I am.
So, what is your perfect life? You're in Cincinnati, right?
I am. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm married and I have two teenage children. Um, I'm retired from corporate, so now my days are my own. So I will say that personal autonomy is huge on my priority list, and so I'm
Mm-hmm.
living that. I'm working on my next books. I publish a weekly newsletter. My newsletter still goes out every Sunday morning to my subscribers. I blog. I do a little bit of teaching to some groups who are interested in the concepts from my book. And I just love life. So my typical day is that I get up and I write every morning. I spend morning time doing different projects, whether it's podcast interviews or working on my book or the different things that I have going on. I take a walk nearly every single day and get myself outside. And I come home and I cook dinner almost every night. It's one of my passions to cook,
Yeah.
and we sit down as a family to eat. And that is just ideal day for me, Bob, and I'm living it.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. And I understand that Cincinnati has a lot of five-star restaurants too.
We have a lot of good food. Cincinnati is a great city.
Yeah. So there's a sense that I have as I went through your book, and I look at the concept of practical spirituality, and is the practical piece of doing the work as you prescribe it there, or is there more to that practical? So I guess what I'm getting at is beside morning pages, is there a spiritual routine that you do or that you recommend to other people? Because I know that I have besides my morning pages, I have a spiritual routine every morning.
Mm-hmm.
And it does, between morning pages and that routine, it takes up about 2 hours of my morning. But boy, am I energized then when I get started.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's one, do you have a spiritual routine? And is there one that you recommend to other people, or is it just, create whatever works for you? So
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and
So
answer
I
that.
so yeah, so I'm going to tell you that for my personal authentic spirit, we like to mix it up. Okay. So other than writing every morning, that is a fixed routine for me. But other things kind of get sprinkled throughout my day and when I feel like I need them. And so, for instance, I meditate. I usually do about 15 minutes of quiet meditation. It's not something that I pencil in my calendar or have it done at a set time each day, but I sort of notice what's going on with me and feel it welling up and saying, I think I need a 15-minute sit just on this. So I definitely meditate. I have a practice of taking the different areas of my life and really envisioning what I want those areas of my life to be, like what I might want to experience. So I see this process of visualization as a form of prayer. So I sit and just sort of contemplate this different areas of my life and what I want. And so that's something that I do most days. And then the rest of my spiritual practices, because I believe all of life is spiritual, is really just watching myself throughout the day so that I don't go unaware. And when I go unaware, I tend to veer off into worry or negative scenario planning, or I get worked up because somebody annoyed me. I get myself all worked up because I've gone unaware. And then I simply, throughout the day, try to bring myself back and say, like, okay, we spooled off on that one. Let's come back to center and what's going on. And I see that as a spiritual practice to do that.
So is there a recommendation, like you said, you have some groups of people who have read your book or talk about these concepts. where you help them explore spiritual practices, or any recommendations that you would make? And I'm thinking about my audience here, so I'm
Yeah.
curious.
So let me just take you through one thing. Again, I see this as a core spiritual practice, and it is something that I do regularly. So I know a lot of people keep to-do lists and lists of things that they're making themselves do, or they're afraid they're going to forget. Um, I encourage people to not work their day from a to-do list, which is frankly a list of things you don't want to do, and to instead really make it a practice of anchoring within your center and focusing on what you want to do. Now, of course, we all have hard edges, but to get more into a practice of listening to your energy and listening to your spirit and working. And then when you do, I encourage people to create a logbook. And so a logbook is very simple. I've got mine here. It's just a little paper notebook where I put the date and I write down what I did and how I felt when I did it. So it might be something simple. Had breakfast, felt satisfied. And when you do this practice over time, I mean, you could have, I'll write, had a podcast interview with Bob, felt confident. When you do this over time, you just get more and more in touch with your spirit through how you feel, and you begin to know yourself better. And it just is this wonderful and practical way. The other benefit, because I also log and write down any good moment of my day or anything wonderful in my life, is that you begin to capture these really lovely moments in your day. And so many of us miss them. So many of us will go through a day and have 100 small moments that are good, and we'll come home to our family at night around the dinner table and complain and tell them about the one thing that went sideways. So I see logging as a practical way to reorient your thinking towards the good, the wonderful, and the done. But I also see it as a spiritual tool connecting to yourself and really knowing yourself better.
I love that. That is so terrific. I've been in 3 or 4 discussions lately around feelings and the difficulties people have with connecting with those feelings, because there are enough negative feelings there that you want to push them down or suppress them or ignore them.
Yeah.
And the good positive feelings you want to hold on to, so you're not releasing anything. You're either pressing it down, suppressing it, or you're saying, okay, I need to hold on to this because this feels so good. And you're not really doing your body any favors by doing those things, because you're creating tension and you're creating blockages and you're creating pain, because when your body stores that stuff, it's got to go somewhere, and it's energy, and that energy
Yep.
needs released.
Bob, I completely agree. And I have seen um, many emotions pass through me quickly simply by naming them. So when I log and say, felt frustrated, often just expressing that helps me move through the frustration more quickly, and often then becomes a source of reflection for myself to say, why was I frustrated there? And to really look at my own thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a terrific practice. There's a, there's a Marvel movie out right now called The Thunderbolts, and the whole premise behind this film is that whole sense of holding your feelings in, and what that does to you negatively, and how that can spread beyond your energy to other folks, and then what it means to really work through those issues and express them and get to the other side and release them. And it just amazed me that this that this movie based on a comic was so insightful and so right on point. And that makes me think of, I guess, our culture in general seems to be opening up a lot more around feelings and around figuring out appropriate ways to express them, so that we don't end up with people who feel that they've got to release all this anger, and it turns into violence, and it turns into munitions, and it turns into wars, when none of that is really necessary if people just knew how to deal with their emotions.
I agree. I haven't seen the movie, but I agree with all you've said. And again, that's one of the reasons I see this as a spiritual practice, to simply name the emotion and let it be whatever it's going to be. And that was also part of my journey, was learning. I mean, I had a habit of repressing any emotion that I deemed bad or unacceptable, like anger, frustration, resentment. And I really had to learn to repattern myself to say, no, let that out into the world, even if I let it out in the pages of my journal
Yeah.
and privately, but get it out there.
Yeah. No, that's so refreshing and so healthy, I guess. It sounds like self-therapy in a way, because it does take you through a therapeutic process. So in this whole realm of your journey through all of this, was there therapy involved? Did you ever consider going into therapy, and how did that work out?
Yes, I have done therapy, and I think talk therapy is so helpful to get that amorphous mass of thinking that so many of us carry, to get it into words and get it out and get it expressed. But I will tell you, Bob, two things about therapy. Even in therapy, I found I wasn't completely honest, and there was just I just wasn't able to show up authentically there fully. And so that's one of the reasons I really turned to writing, because in my notebooks and in that privacy, I could really just let it all hang out and let it be there. So for me, that helped. The second thing I'll say is, and again, I think therapy is wonderfully helpful, but again, the work is out in the wild. So if I had a therapist sitting with me, in all of these life situations, that'd be great. But I think we each have a duty to be our own therapist, to learn how to give ourselves words of support and encouragement and honesty, and to work through things as they come up on the spot. That's where the magic happens in true transformation. The therapist helps, I believe, set you on the course and give you tools, but you've got to go out there and be in the wild applying them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I guess when I think about therapy, and I actually have a daughter-in-law who is a therapist, uh, that whole conversation and that talk, as you said, really relies on your honesty with yourself and with the therapist. They can only help you with so much. And they can ask the questions, and I think it's helpful that once you know what those questions are, you can ask yourself those questions on an ongoing basis, because it's a lot of responsibility, personal responsibility, to do that work yourself. So it seems to me that at least entering into talk therapy is a good start to get you on the path. and get you used to the conversations that you need to have with yourself.
Yes, and talk therapy often introduces people simply to new ways of seeing themselves and issues that they need to hear. Like sometimes you just can't break out of something you're stuck with, and a therapist is wonderful for opening your mind to something new.
Yeah. Well, we are nearing the end of our time and our conversation. So, as I do with all my guests, I would like to leave you with the opportunity to leave our audience with some words of wisdom. So, anything you'd like to leave them with?
Well, I'd like to leave everyone with the idea that their personal spiritual journey is the life they are living right now. And with a little bit of awareness and a little bit of open mindedness and open heartedness, they can make that life anything they choose. Those are the tools that I teach. And I very much believe that we are each here to express authentically as ourselves and to follow our passions. You can find out more on my website at sueerhart.com.
Terrific, Sue. And again, the name of the book is Lose Your Critic. And that's the internal critic. But if your spouse is that critic too, then watch out. So take what you've heard, audience, incorporate into your life those things that resonate with you. Put the rest on a shelf until you're ready to deal with it. Until next time, this has been Your Spiritual Journey.